Well, good morning, everybody, and greetings from COP26 and here in Glasgow. And it's a great pleasure to welcome a number of people in the room here today with me and also all of those listening and watching across the world. I'm proud to present South Australia's clean energy transformation. I'm David Ridgway and I'm the Agent General for South Australia. And before moving from Adelaide to London earlier this year, I was a member of the South Australian Parliament, where I was fortunate enough to hold the portfolios of Minister for Trade, Investment and Tourism. And I know South Australians take a great pride in our leading role in the global energy revolution. We are home to the original world's largest lithium-ion battery, the Hornsdale Power Reserve. South Australia has become a test bed for battery storage innovation. In the last 4 years, we've attracted multinational companies like Tesla and Neoen to develop innovative projects that are laying the groundwork for national energy market reforms while firming our renewable electricity supplies. South Australia is at the global forefront of the clean energy transition. We are ranked second only to Denmark by the International Energy Agency for the amount of variable renewable electricity we produce annually. But unlike Denmark, we are located at the end of a long national electricity market with minimal interconnection to other states. You can see from the slide, it's a very long network, some 5,000 kilometres from one end to the other. But in just over 15 years, South Australia has transformed its energy system from predominantly coal and gas to no coal and 62% renewable energy generation, supported by gas and innovative battery storage technologies. We have abundant natural resources in both wind and solar, and a vision to become a global exporter of clean hydrogen that will help our trading partners reduce their emissions. We've also been one of the first to face and to solve the challenges of integrating high volumes of renewable electricity into our energy system. And by any measure, what we've achieved can be regarded as remarkable. The benchmarks for incorporating renewable energy into the energy mix are consistently being broken and reset. And in October last year, South Australia was the first jurisdiction anywhere in the world where their solar output accounted for more than 100% of the state's demand, with the surplus gas and wind energy generation being exported interstate. And you can see from the slide the significant amount of renewable energy in our grid on those particularly record-breaking days. And we are racing towards our target to achieve net 100% renewable energy by 2030. And we aim by 2050, we could be producing 5 times, and I repeat that, 5 times the renewable energy that is needed to meet our current demand. And you might ask, how did we become a world leader in energy? Our growth in renewables is underpinned by world-class wind and solar resources with a vast expanse of available land. Our energy transition is supported by a pro-business state government with consistent and progressive energy policy and funding for new generation and storage projects. As a result, areas in our state, such as the Upper Spencer Gulf, have become a magnet for renewable energy investment. I'm sure we've had a slide. You can see the wonderful resources we have on that particular slide when you overlay the wind and solar resource in the state of South Australia. This is a significant resource. And of course, it's very good news for having this particular resource. Our wholesale electricity prices are falling, making us nationally competitive. We have more than $6 billion of investment already delivered into South Australia in large-scale renewable energy storage projects, with 3 times that investment in the pipeline. South Australia boasts 3 utility-scale solar farms, 23 large-scale wind farms that generated 40% of the state's energy in 2020 and 21, and that is the highest percentage of any Australian state or territory. We have 4 grid-scale batteries, with a further 27 in the pipeline in the development pipeline. We have Australia's largest green hydrogen electrolyser, and we have 2 world-leading home battery schemes resulting in the highest uptake of home batteries in Australia and paving the way for more than 10 virtual power plants to enter the market. For over a decade, South Australia has seen uninterrupted growth in rooftop solar. Today, 40% of South Australians' households have a rooftop solar system installed. And in 2021, rooftop solar generated 15% of South Australia's electricity. Widespread adoption of rooftop solar has flipped the profile of when our state experiences minimal operational demand, from the middle of the night to the middle of the day when solar generation is in surplus. As the adoption of rooftop solar continues to gather pace, addressing the challenges of balancing high volumes of renewable energy flowing into the grid have been a key priority for our state. Innovation in battery storage, doubling our interconnection to other states, demand management programs and energy productivity measures for large-scale energy consumers are all playing their part. To give you a sense of the sector, I'd like to share with you some of the key highlights for 2021. South Australia decommissions its last coal-fired power station in 2016. Energy storage has been a key to firming our energy supplies and expanding our renewable energy sector. In 2016, South Australia commissioned the world's largest lithium-ion battery, the Hornsdale Power Reserve. In 2020, the state government supported its expansion, allowing the battery to further demonstrate its capacity to arrest system disturbances. This year, Neoen will be implementing the Tesla's virtual machine mode software, which enables the provision of synthetic inertia in addition to the security benefits it already provides. And in the first 2 years of operation, the Hornsdale Power Reserve saved the market and consumers $150 million through the provision of contingency and regulation frequency control ancillary services. So South Australia now has 4 grid-scale batteries that are connected to our network, a 5th on the way, and another 27 in the development pipeline. And in 2021, we've seen the construction of the state's 23rd wind farm and the first combined wind and solar hybrid project both near Port Augusta in the state's north. In recent years, South Australia has been required to run a minimum amount of gas-fired generation to provide grid services such as strength and inertia. This has been reduced again in the past few weeks with the commissioning of 4 new synchronous condensers, providing and replacing services once provided by coal-fired power plants, allowing low-cost renewables to provide an even greater share of the state's electricity supply. South Australian Government's home battery scheme has been a primary driver in making South Australia the national capital for home battery uptake. Last year, 30% of the home batteries installed in Australia were installed in South Australia. And I repeat that, 30% of all the batteries installed in Australia last year were in South Australia. It's an impressive result when you consider we only have 8% of the national population in South Australia. This scheme gives all grid-connected South Australians access to subsidised batteries and low-interest loans to help pay for the installation of battery and rooftop solar. Its success has contributed to more than 27,000 home batteries being installed or approved for installation in South Australia. The government is supporting Tesla to deliver Australia's virtual power plant and helping it scale up in size and complexity. Tesla's power plant has demonstrated how a network of home batteries can be aggregated and managed to help stabilise the grid both locally and nationally and reduce energy costs for the households. In the first instance, it's been rolled out across public housing for the benefit of low-income households. As this project expands, over 50,000 homes are expected to join the network. This project has brought forward groundbreaking software and energy technologies to integrate distributed energy resources and support Australia's consumer-led energy transition. Together with Tesla, the state has embarked on a unique trial for battery-only installations for homes not suited to rooftop solar to help soak up that excess renewable energy when it's available in the grid. With surplus renewables, there are not many places in the world better suited to providing zero-emissions energy for transport as South Australia. Electric vehicles coupled with charging will give South Australians the ability to harness renewable energy and reduce their transport-related carbon emissions and, of course, cut their motoring costs. The state government is making the state's biggest investment in electric vehicles, committing $18.3 million to roll out its electric vehicle action plan. The plan includes $13.4 million in funding to leverage the private sector investment to accelerate the rollout of a statewide charging network, giving consumers the confidence that they can go the distance across our vast state. And it is a big state. It's more than 1 million square kilometres. The government's also investing $3.6 million into smart charging trials. We're supporting the market to trial new services and charging solutions to demonstrate how two-way bidirectional smart charging can lower emissions, reduce costs, and of course support the grid. And with 30% of our emissions coming from transport, the electrification of transport is a priority for us to reach our target of reducing the net greenhouse emissions by more than 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. South Australia has an ever-growing pipeline of more than 40 renewable energy projects, representing $20 billion in capital investment, and putting us well on our way to realising our vision of a 500% renewables. The investment will be unlocked by doubling our interconnection to other states on the eastern seaboard, making green hydrogen and growing electricity-intensive industries, making South Australia an energy powerhouse and exporting more energy than it needs for domestic use. South Australia's hydrogen sector plays this to the state's strengths in clean energy transformation. The government has invested $40 million in grants and loans to advance hydrogen projects and is welcoming international partners to scale up investments and exports. The first of these to come online is the Australian Gas Infrastructure Group's hydrogen park in South Australia. AGIG has successfully installed Australia's largest electrolyser just outside of Adelaide and is producing renewable hydrogen for domestic and commercial use. The renewable hydrogen is being blended with the natural gas at volumes of up to 5% and supplied to nearby homes via the existing gas network. AGIG is also supplying its renewable hydrogen to industry via tube trailers and aims to supply the transport sector in the near future. Building on this vision, Port Bonython in the Upper Spencer Gulf, which is about 4 hours drive north of Adelaide, is of strategic importance and one of the most prospective hydrogen export hubs for both blue and green hydrogen. The level of global investment and interest in the Port Bonython Hydrogen Hub has the capacity to transform South Australia into a renewable energy exporter in the next decade. 7 shortlisted projects from both South Australian and international heavy hitters are proposing tens of billions of dollars of investment, potentially creating hundreds of jobs, all in parts of the hydrogen supply chain. Together with the shortlisted projects, it could produce over 1.5 million tonnes of hydrogen per year. And our international partners are incredibly important to realising our vision. The European Union is including hydrogen as a vital component in its energy grid. Rotterdam, Europe's largest port and energy hub, has a master plan to become a major hydrogen hub for Europe. And we have a memorandum of understanding with the Port of Rotterdam to study the feasibility of exporting green hydrogen made in South Australia to Rotterdam. And we expect that feasibility study to be released before Christmas. And we have every expectation that access and transition to a lower emission energy future will revolutionise the way we operate, help consumers and big business and heavy industry to decarbonise and power a new world. I will now invite Nick Smith, who's the Executive Director of Low Carbon of Growth and Low Carbon from the Department of Energy and Mining, to join me on the Q&A panel session.
How are you, David?
Hello, Nick. Morning. I'm not sure whether you have any verbal questions from the crowd here, or we'll have some that will come in via the group that's listening. Did I miss anything, Nick?
No, I think you've covered it off pretty well, David. In a short period of time, it's a very exciting time to be, the vanguard of international, transformation as we see economies sort of moving to clean energy and I guess, from our perspective, the opportunity to embed clean energy in our minerals and decarbonise those really hard to abate sectors. So the excitement around the high penetration of renewable energies, and the opportunities around, hydrogen seems to be a pretty good buzzword at the moment. But we've got fantastic opportunities at Port Bonython, and really what we're seeing at this stage is Port Bonython's really stage one of of multiple different plays for hydrogen around South Australia. It's the depth of interest is quite incredible at the moment. I think we've got what is the expected time frame before the Port Bonython projects are announced? Look, I guess the Premier came out and announced that we're dealing with 7 shortlisted parties at the moment. We expect that we're working through the land allocation with the various different parties at the moment, and we hope that we'll have something done in sort of December, January. We'll have those parcels of land finalised, and we'll look to announce that in due course. It's there's multiple different parties involved in some of those consortia, in those 7 shortlisted parties, so it's not necessarily as simple as we might think. So but it's probably we're hoping to sort of in either late this year or early new year for announcement around that side of things. I guess there's a question around what role do we see electric vehicles playing, and they're just incredibly important for us. The opportunity, they're very large batteries on wheels effectively, and I guess the interesting part for us is, as David pointed out, we've consistently got excess renewables in our grid, and often now the pricing between 10 and 3 in the middle of the day is actually is negative, and so the ability to charge vehicles in the middle of the day offers up the opportunity to decarbonize our transport networks, and really absorb those renewables into the grid and improve the balance of the network. So the ability for us, in South Australia, we have a very peaky load, and quite often in summertime, when everyone's got their air conditioners running hard, we're using double the demand, the average demand in the state. So there is the ability in the future for electric vehicles to play a role in terms of feeding back into the grid as well, and smart charging becomes really important for us in terms of how we can bed that into the grid to provide additional services from that side of things. Do you want me to keep going, David, or
I could see another 3 questions queued up in the box at the bottom of the screen, so you keep scrolling through them, please, Nick.
Sure. So I guess there's a question from Roz. Will government encourage industrial development on the Eyre Peninsula before export? Look, I guess the reality is we already have a significant industrial facility on the Eyre Peninsula. We've got the Whyalla Steelworks there, which has been there for some time. We've got significant, agricultural industry. We've got mining exports out of the port of Whyalla as well, and of course at Port Bonython we already have an existing oil and gas, industry there as well. So, we sort of see that they go hand in hand, and I guess it's a matter of creating, trying to match the demand with supply around that side of things more broadly. So. We're looking at trying to support hydrogen transport opportunities, the embedding of hydrogen into steel to decarbonise the steelworks. So we see that the scale of investment around Port Bonython will just naturally tend to attract itself or attract technology and service and supply companies to those locations anyway. We've got another question here in terms of, can you please explain what a world of 500% renewable energy will look like in South Australia? Well, I reckon it'll look pretty good. I think we'll have, look, I think there's no doubt about the interconnector into New South Wales adds value, but really where we're seeing the opportunities is, energy intensive industries that we don't currently have. we'll be looking to export out. I guess the chief scientist of Australia, the former chief scientist of Australia, Alan Finkel, called it shipping our sunshine. We're very fortunate to be naturally blessed with such incredibly good wind and solar resources, and it's our opportunity to share those with the rest of the world and help them achieve their decarbonisation aims by sharing our export, our solar and renewable resources as hydrogen exports or ammonia or methyl cyclohexane. Or we might be able to embed them in some of our minerals in terms of steel and copper and graphite and rare earths to help produce products that are, relatively decarbonised in the mineral sector and offer up opportunities for other companies, other countries as well. We've got one here. Is the what role are home batteries playing in South Australia's move to renewables? They're really, really important for us. South Australia is now moving toward, zero operational demand on some days, which means that we're producing more energy than we're consuming in the state. And batteries become a really important way of avoiding, the ramp up on the duck curve, because what we're seeing is that the duck curve's getting larger and larger, and it's almost becoming a swan curve in terms of the ramp up rate. So being able to soak up those renewables in the middle of the day and shift that consumption, that generation and that electricity to periods of peak demand becomes really important in helping to balance our system. And we strongly encourage the battery uptake. And what we're seeing in terms of the home battery scheme, the largest per capita rollout in the world, the virtual power plants. We've got 10 virtual power plants around South Australia now. The Tesla battery only for side of things is something that we've never really considered, but it's proving to be pretty popular. So home batteries are just incredibly important, and we really, really support them in every single way. I guess there's a question here around how is South Australia working to increase the uptake of electric vehicles in terms of affordability and charging station infrastructure, and would the EV tax hinder or help this? So look, we're close to completing the procurement or the tender evaluations around the rollout of our electric vehicle infrastructure. It's getting pretty close, and I know that my team's been working very hard on that. Due to probity, I can't really talk about where exactly we're up to in that, but I think it really sort of removes the range anxiety in South Australia. We're a very large state, 1 million square kilometres. Range anxiety is quite critical for South Australians. And having the rollout of stations around the state that enables people to travel without having to worry too much about where they're going to charge and how they're going to charge will be really important. Does an EV tax hinder or help this? Well, look, I guess the reality is that at the moment, people purchasing fuel pay a tax. They pay a road user charge, and I guess if it's the tax is looking to be deferred through until 2027, it won't come in until then. In the interim, there are rebates and incentives for people to purchase electric vehicles. So look, I think from my perspective, if I know that I'm going to buy an electric vehicle and it's going to be cheaper to operate over the life of it, might be a little bit more expensive up front, but at least I know what the costs are going to be. I'd much prefer to have that situation, and I think most reasonable people would. That's the reality is somebody's got to pay for the roads to be maintained, and whether it's the taxpayer more broadly or whether it's the people that are using that road, those roads, I think it's a reasonable request. Is the government considering other alternative energy storage to batteries? The short answer is yes. I guess hydrogen's an alternative energy storage. We're looking, we've got solar thermal projects that have been proposed in the state. We've got pumped hydro projects that we're looking at. And I guess the the importance of energy storage is that it's a little bit like a transport fleet. You sort of need different types of energy storage to do to fill different gaps in the energy system. I guess if I liken the big battery at Hornsdale, it's a little bit like a Ferrari. It's very fast, it's very quick, it injects power into and out of the grid and helps to maintain that side of things. Hydrogen plays at the other end. It's a bit like a locomotive, and plays that role of providing long-term storage for when the sun and the wind may not be operating. But I think in the interim, you sort of need that that 4 to 12 hour storage, which pumped hydro offers up that opportunity, and then that sort of 12 to 48 hour storage as well. So yes, we're open to alternative energy storage, and there's no doubt about that. We've got a question here from Mark Bunch. Is there the prospect that the South Australian generated hydrogen may take a chunk out of Australia's current LNG export market to East Asia? Look, potentially, I suspect that there's a little bit of crossover, but I suspect that in the next 20, 30, 40 years, LNG will still continue to play a very important role. I think we'll start to see countries look to decarbonise faster, and I sincerely hope they do, because it's better for everyone. I suspect that where you'll start to see hydrogen operators in terms of blending of ammonia with coal-fired power stations, like they're looking to trial in Japan. I think the decarbonisation of the transport fleet will see oil start to probably be diminished initially. So I don't see that LNG will be a major impact from that side of things in the immediate term. I've got a question here from Lee. As Australia's EV uptake currently lags behind most other developed countries, is the government looking to offer any further incentives to reduce the whole of life costs, so fleet managers who purchase over 50% of all new vehicles will start buying them? Look, I think there's been some really good work done with our team. We had a session out at the Bend racetrack recently, where fleet managers were able to go and drive and trial a whole range of different electric vehicles, and the feedback from that was just fantastic. It's about education. It's about understanding what the capabilities of cars are and building people's confidence in them. I think that over time, it depends on what type of fleet you're operating and who uses it and how they use it. But I think electric vehicles will be there, and they will prove their own once the life cycle costs have been done. Are there other incentives? We're looking at a whole range of different policy settings around electric vehicles, but I think let's start with the infrastructure and the smart charging side of things to make sure that we can utilise that. And then I think there's a whole range of different policy options that we're sort of testing internally in terms of what that might look like. But I think getting to fleet managers and talking to them will be important. There's no doubt about it. Got a question here from Chris Russell. Does the vehicle to grid trial require legislative change, and has that trial begun yet? That's a good question, Chris. There's electric vehicles are on the road now, and I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that. It's probably a better question for the Department for Infrastructure and Transport. I might just defer that one to them if that's all right, Chris. Is there any crossover from Vienna Tran in Australia? Is there any crossover between blue carbon and DEM's portfolio, given SA's extensive and rich coastline? Look, I guess it's not an area that we have portfolio responsibility over. That's being led out of the Department for Environment and Water. But we work closely with our colleagues in the Department for Environment and Water anyway, because we're responsible for leading 10 of the action items under the Climate Change Action Plan. So whilst we don't have any direct relationship or direct ownership of that, we do work closely with our friends in the Department for Environment and Water. And then last question that we have there is, what are you thinking about fuel cell electric vehicles? Look, love them. I think they're fantastic for Australia in particular, where we tend to have relatively large SUVs seeming to becoming more and more mainstream as the car of choice. We travel long distances, heavy vehicles in particular. Our Class 8 trucks, or our prime moving trucks, they tend to be 500, 600 horsepower demands. They're pulling B doubles, B triples, and road trains with multiple different trailers. It's difficult to put a battery on there and maintain a decent payload for them. So we see that in the first instance, fuel cell electric vehicles are probably more likely to be the medium duty fuel cell electric vehicles, and the heavy duty industry, the heavy duty transport industry will probably be the most logical places for fuel cells. We're keen to, I guess probably back to base is where we see the initial starting point, or potentially a dedicated hydrogen highway between specific centres that offers up some opportunity to decarbonise transport fleets and utilise hydrogen. But we're very conscious that they're around. We're very keen to get them, and I guess we need to just sort of break that chicken and egg cycle around equipment availability and the infrastructure required to support the equipment. So we're looking at that, and they do form part of our electric vehicle action plan anyway. When we talk about electric vehicles, we talk about battery electric vehicles as well as fuel cell electric vehicles. So we do have plans to incorporate them in our broader rollout of electric vehicles.
I think we've got 2 questions left, so we'll just wrap that up. We're a little bit over time, but I think we can do these last 2 questions, and then any further questions come in, the department can answer them online.
Thanks, David. I guess the next one is, what would you suggest is the key thing other states or countries could learn from what South Australia has done with renewables so far, particularly in the context of the COP26 discussions? Well, I guess be brave, I think, is probably the key thing. We're a little bit different to the other states in Australia, where we haven't got the incredibly good coal resources that they've had, or we've had very good gas reserves for many years. But what we do have is we have a state that's more likely to be impacted by climate change than any other state in Australia. And we do have incredibly good wind resources, and that are complemented with solar resources. So, whilst it's taken some challenges, come and talk to us and learn how we've done it. What we have worked out how to do is, integrate very high penetrations of variable renewable energy into our grid. It hasn't been as simple as we would have liked. And, I know that my colleague in the Energy and Technical Regulation Division, Vince Duffy, has probably bitten down his fingernails more times than he'd care to think about. But, we've just had a natural competitive advantage, and we play to that. So, it offers up opportunities to decarbonise and do the right thing for the world more broadly. So, don't be frightened to come and ask us, because we're happy to share our intellectual capital around this, because it's really important as other states and countries look to decarbonise their electricity networks and increase renewables. There are challenges to be met, and there's learnings that we're able to share with other countries. And I think the final question here is hydrogen or electric preferred for heavy vehicle use in mining or transport? Look, fantastic question, and I don't think the answer's been resolved yet. There's a number of, talking with some of the OEMs globally, there's a whole range of different fuels being looked at for the mining side of things. They're a little bit harder to decarbonise, but look, I guess, there's battery electric, there's trolley electric, there's fuel cell hybrids, there's looking at synthetic fuels in terms of methanol and ammonia. So where the industry lands on that, we're not too sure. but we're happy to support anything that can help decarbonise that. I guess probably initially the opportunity is around decarbonising the non-core mining operations with heavy transport and the transport of copper concentrates to port, for example, or iron ore to if you're not using it through rail, I should say. So I think probably longer term the heavy vehicle side of things will be the heavier the vehicle, the more likely it is to be a hydrogen or a derivative. The lighter the vehicle, the more likely it is to be electric.
Okay, well, thanks, Nick, for answering those questions. Really appreciate it, and thanks to all of you who have been online listening, or the group that's in the room here today. For the group that's in the room today, there's some postcards at the back of the room which are entitled Climate Smart South Australia. There's a QR code on it. You can scan that and download the document. And all of those of you who are listening online, I'm sure you can go onto the website back in Australia and get the link to the Climate Smart South Australia. It's a really informative, not too heavy read on one of the great things we're doing in South Australia. So thank you all very much for attending today, both in person and online, and have a great sort of run up to Christmas and a good year. And also it's been a great pleasure to represent South Australia here at COP26 this year as well. It's been a wonderful opportunity and a real pleasure. So thank you very much.